Welcome back to the show, Coast to Coast Sports. My name is Levi. We're talking all things NFL Week 7. Let's start with the Chiefs, who beat the 49ers. Kansas City looking really good in a 28-18 win. 28-16 was it? I don't even remember. Let's talk about the Chiefs first, because they did win 6-0. And they feel inevitable. I know I said preseason, I thought the Texans could beat them. Right now, I don't think anyone can beat them because they just have everything going right for them. They play with a toughness. They have a great defense. I think, honestly, the best strategy to beat the Chiefs might be, and I know this, I don't know why they haven't tried this yet. Somebody's got to get Steve Spagnuolo away from the Chiefs. Somebody got to give him a head coaching job. Like, if you're the Raiders or the Dolphins, they might not need a new coach. They like Mike McDaniel. If you're the Raiders or the Titans or the Jets next year, somebody's got to hire Steve Spagnuolo, if for no other reason than to try and weaken the Chiefs. The problem is, no matter who you hire, no matter how good you are, Bills, Ravens, Steelers now, Texans, no matter how good you are, the Chiefs are going to be better. So even like the Bills, like, you could keep McDermott, give Spagnuolo double whatever Kansas City is giving him to be their new defensive coordinator. Seriously, that's the only thing I think that might slow them down, because this defense is humming. And they are firing on all cylinders. Mahomes isn't even playing well. Like, Mahomes this year, according to the QB index that I keep, which is kind of my favorite thing, I track, I have an offensive index. Quarterback index, where does Patrick Mahomes rank? 13th. Yeah, he's been the 13th best quarterback in the NFL this season, according to me. According to it's a statistical analysis, and that's about right. He's been good, but he has not been great. He has not been elite. He's doing it without weapons. Juju was out. Their weapons are, it's Xavier Worthy and Justin Watson and Travis Kelce making plays. Noah Gray making plays. There's one right there from Noah Gray. I think that this team is unstoppable. Kareem Hunt has turned into a superstar running back, 4 touchdowns in his first 2 games with the Chiefs. Mecole Hardman running the ball, making plays. It doesn't matter. They'll win it anyway. They brought in Carson Wentz for a trick play. They're doing little trick play, everything. Every game, it feels like, look at this. Carson Wentz is in as a fullback. He takes the snap, hands it off to Najee Harris. It's ridiculous. Every week, the Chiefs try about 2 or 3 new trick plays, and it feels like they're just practicing. It really does. It feels like Kansas City is practicing. They're like, you know what? We're gonna try 2 trick plays every week, and whichever ones work the best, that'll be what you can expect to see in the playoffs. Seriously. They're unstoppable right now. They feel unstoppable right now. Of course, my pick is the Chiefs to beat the Lions in the Super Bowl. I'm sticking with that. 6-0. I will say this one thing. I heard this on the Rich Eisen show today. The last time that the last undefeated team went to or won the Super Bowl was Peyton Manning. Almost 20 years ago. It was 2006. So 18 years ago with the Colts. Ever since then, the last undefeated team has not won the Super Bowl. Of course, last year, who was it last year? Was it Baltimore? Or it was either the 49ers or the Ravens, I think. But obviously the Chiefs won it. Before that, Philly was the last undefeated team one year. And I know Pittsburgh was a couple years ago, and they didn't win it. The Niners have been it a couple times, and they haven't won it. The Rams were, and they lost to the Patriots. So, yeah, it obviously, if recent history tells us anything, being the last undefeated team is not a guarantee to win the Super Bowl. Some may say a lot of times it's because they peak too early. The thing about the Chiefs is I don't think they're peaking at all. I think their defense is playing out of its mind and obviously peaking. Their offense is not peaking. So, yeah, there's still a lot more that this team can do. All right, let's talk about the Brock Purdy aspect of this game. So Brock Purdy, I hate the way the media, I've always said this, I hate the way the media treats Brock Purdy. Last year, the narrative with Purdy was, well, he's playing well, but he's overrated because he has all these great weapons. And it was really CMC and Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and Deebo Samuel. It's the Avengers, it's all these great weapons. And the narrative was that we're overrating Brock Purdy because of the weapons, right? And I always said, look, Purdy was not being overrated because even the people who were highest on Brock Purdy admitted that he wasn't an elite quarterback. Nobody was saying he was elite. We were saying he was good. He was a top 10 quarterback last year. That is the truth. Brock Purdy in 2024 was a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. In 2023. He was about the 6th or 7th best in the league, maybe the 8th best, somewhere in that range. He was in the 6 to 8 range. That is right for him. That's where he should be. That's where he landed. And the only people who were really overrating him last year were the ones who were saying he should be an MVP, but obviously he wasn't. He didn't get any MVP votes, right? Or he was 5th. Was he 5th in MVP or something like that? But I think for the most part, the media had Brock Purdy properly rated. Good to great, but not elite. Nobody was saying he was elite. And the idea that, well, if you take away his weapons, he's going to struggle. Of course. I mean that's true for every quarterback. There are very few quarterbacks who can take away their weapons and they succeed. So the idea that Purdy was the only quarterback that we can hold to that standard is ridiculous. The idea that when Jared Goff, everything's going well for Jared Goff, and nobody brings up the fact that 3 years ago when he was on a terrible roster, he won 3 games. Nobody brings that up about Jared Goff. Nobody brings up, when Josh Allen doesn't have a run game, or when Dak Prescott doesn't have a run game, they struggle. But with Purdy, it's always, well, if you took away his weapons, he's going to stink. So yesterday we saw, what does it look like without the weapons? Well, he stunk. 3 interceptions. Kind of moved the ball, but not really. No touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He played poorly. And, of course, lost. He might have had 1 touchdown, I forget. Either way, doesn't play well. Ayuk exited in the second quarter, out for the season. Deebo Samuel played 3 snaps. He was sick. Juwan Jennings was hurt. And CMC, of course, hasn't played a snap this season. So by the second half, he's missing his 3 top receivers and his starting running back. 4 of his top 5 playmakers were out in the second half. 3 of his top 5 were out in the first half. He did have Ayuk in the first half, but Deebo he played 3 snaps. That doesn't count. Deebo was sick. And it's like, of course he's going to struggle. Because he's not elite, but there's very few. I mean, if the standard in the NFL is that in order to be a good quarterback, you have to be able to play well without your top 3, without 3 of your top weapons, then there's a very few, there's probably only 2 good quarterbacks in the league. And that's the problem that I have. The discussion is always, people will say he's not even good because he struggles when he doesn't have CMC, Deebo, and Ayuk. Like, come on, man. He's missing his 3 top receivers and his running back. Of course he's going to struggle. He's bound to struggle in that spot. Can you imagine asking any quarterback, so you're going to go play Kansas City, the best defense in the league, and oh, by the way, it's on the road, and oh, by the way, they're coming off a bye, and oh, by the way, not only do they have the best defense in the league, Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback, and oh, by the way, no your starting running backs out, and your top 3 receivers are injured. Go win us this football game. Who's going to win that football game? Name one. I don't think there is anyone. I don't think there is a single quarterback who can go into Kansas City missing 3 receivers and their starting running back to go into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs. And that's even with, even if the Chiefs weren't on a bye, which, by the way, Andy Reid he's never lost off a bye in his career. So the Chiefs were always going to win this game. The fact that they were underdogs was ridiculous, and I said that last week. Of course they were going to win this game. At home, coming off a bye, and the 49ers are injured. Of course the Chiefs were going to win. There was never an outcome where the 49ers win this game. And Purdy, of course he's going to struggle. Look at Jared Goff. Everybody loves Jared Goff right now, right? Everybody loves him. A couple years ago, when he didn't have Jameson Williams, and he didn't have Jahmyr Gibbs, he didn't have David Montgomery, he didn't have Sam Laporta. He won 3 games in his first year in Detroit, and people thought he should be replaced. They said, oh, they're going to draft somebody new. He's going to become a backup. That's what they thought about Jared Goff 2 years ago. Look at him now. Look at Kirk Cousins. Take away Derek Carr. Take away his weapons. He's not the same player. Take away DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett from Geno Smith. Let's see him have a good game. Let's see Josh Allen. We just saw Josh Allen. They had to trade for Amari Cooper. He was struggling without Stephon Diggs, and he had a running game. He had a running back. Remember back when the Bills couldn't run the ball? Josh Allen was the most mistake-prone quarterback in the league, and he's a star. And he still made mistakes. CJ Stroud, we watched it yesterday. CJ Stroud, no Nico Collins. He still had Stephon Diggs. He still had Joe Mixon. Didn't even throw for 100 passes, missing his top receiver. Purdy was missing his top 3 receivers. CJ Stroud didn't even throw for 100 yards. And remember the game against Minnesota when Stroud didn't have Joe Mixon. They couldn't run the ball. They got blown out on the road against a good defense. Missing pieces. CJ Stroud struggled. So if the standard for Purdy is that, well, because he can't play well when he's missing 4 of his top 5 playmakers on offense, then that makes him a bad quarterback. Then I guess CJ Stroud is also a bad quarterback. And I guess Jared Goff's a bad quarterback. And I guess Dak, who has always, his entire career, Dak hasn't been able to win without a strong run game. His entire career, that's been the narrative with Dak. When Dak throws the ball 25 plus times in a game, they have a losing record. He needs to have a good run game to win. So if Purdy's a bad quarterback because he can't win without CMC, Debo, Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings, then there's probably only 2 great quarterbacks in the league. Mahomes is one of them, and Lamar's the other one, because Lamar has never had a great receiving core, and he's always been good. So I guess there's only 2 good quarterbacks in the league, right? Is that the standard? Is that really what we're going to call this? Is that really what we're going with here? That's just ridiculous. You cannot tell me that because you took away his 4 of his top 5 weapons, that makes him a bad quarterback. That's a terrible standard to hold a player to, because we don't apply that standard to other players. It only applies to Purdy. Purdy is what he's always been. He is a good quarterback, but he needs weapons. Every quarterback does, outside of Mahomes and Lamar. Mahomes because he elevates bad receivers and turns them into good ones, and Lamar because he can make the plays by himself with his legs. That's it. They're the only 2 quarterbacks that could overcome that amount of injuries. Josh Allen can't overcome losing Stephon Diggs. They had to trade for Amari Cooper. There's Joe Burrow. Remember when Joe Burrow didn't have T. Higgins? He looked bad. He lost to New England. He struggled in week 1 against New England. He still had Jamar Chase in that game. He was down 1 receiver. Completely different. Matthew Stafford. Take away Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and he looks like a bad quarterback. Nobody thinks Matthew Stafford's a bad quarterback. What we recognize with him, oh, well, his top 2 receivers are out. Of course he's going to struggle. CJ Stroud loses Nico Collins, plays poorly. Not his fault. Burrow, Allen, Goff, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Dak. Quarterbacks that have had good careers, quarterbacks that we like. None of them can overcome that amount of injuries. Lamar can, and Mahomes can. So if the standard is you're only a good quarterback if you can overcome 4 injuries to 4 of your top 5 playmakers, there's only 2 good quarterbacks in the league. That's just the truth about it. If that's the standard. I don't believe that, though. Look at Jalen Hurts when he doesn't have A.J. Brown. He turns into a different player. Jalen Hurts looks like a borderline backup when you take away A.J. Brown. Give him A.J. Brown, he looks like a top 10 player in the league. That's how the NFL works. You need weapons. Every quarterback needs weapons. Rodgers in his prime could win with some injured receivers. Rodgers not anymore, in his prime he could. Peyton Manning could do it. Who else? I don't even know who else. Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Mahomes, Lamar. MVPs. Those are the only guys who can win and play well with that amount of injuries. So let's call it for what it is. Purdy is a good quarterback. He's a top 12 to 15 quarterback in the league right now. That's where he's at. He's going to have bad games. He's going to have bad seasons. But he's not a bad player because he can't win when CMC, Debo, Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings are all hurt. Against the best defense in the league, on the road, and the Chiefs coming off a bye. Don't tell me that that's not a valid excuse for a guy to have a bad game. That's a clear excuse to have a bad game. And this is coming from a Seahawks fan. All right, let's talk Sunday Night Football. Steelers-Jets. Russell Wilson struggling early. But I've said all season I think he should be their starter. A lot of people disagreed. But Mike Tomlin really proved himself. This is the thing. I think it's funny. You know, we always, everyone's so quick to criticize people, especially Mike Tomlin. 17 years in the league. He's been their head coach. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been to the playoffs. Never had a losing record. And the media was very quick to say, oh, he made the wrong choice to start Russ. Sure. 37 points. First time in almost 3 years they've scored 37 points. 3 total touchdowns from Russ. The last time the Steelers had a quarterback that scored 3 total touchdowns for them, actually, it was Mitchell Trubisky. But we all know how that turned out. Russell Wilson, 109 passer rating. Highest this season. Fields' highest was 104. And Russell Wilson looked good after the first quarter. He struggled early, and he settled in, and he was throwing a deep ball. All of a sudden, George Pickens looks like one of the best receivers in the league. With when it was Pickett and Fields and Trubisky and Mason Rudolph throwing the ball to George Pickens, he was a good receiver. When it was Russell Wilson throwing him the ball, all of a sudden he's a great receiver. I was like, whoa, that's a different George Pickens. That's a different player. He looks a lot better, a lot more comfortable. He's throwing deep balls. It was everything the Jets wanted Aaron Rodgers to be, is what Russell Wilson did to the Steelers. He played efficiently. He didn't make mistakes. He took what he needed to take. He didn't take a bunch of sacks like he did in Seattle. And Pittsburgh doesn't have a great O-line. But Russ he did what he had to do. And when the moment came in the late in the game, in the third and fourth quarter, when they needed him to put together some longer drives, he did. Right? The defense kind of bailed him out early with a couple of interceptions. And Beanie Bishop, obviously, a huge playmaker, Beanie Bishop, a couple of interceptions off of Aaron Rodgers. The defense did what they needed to do, and Russ did what he needed to do. And I think that was the vision with Rodgers and the Jets was, look, if Aaron can be 80% of what he used to be, and the defense can be great, like it has been for the past couple seasons, the Jets can be a good team. Problem is the defense is good, not great, and Rodgers is maybe about 50% of what he used to be, not even close to 80%. Russell Wilson, that's a good deep ball right there. That's a great pass. And that was the first time he kind of woke up. They had to get him going. They woke him up with that deep ball, and it worked. You see Devontae Adams, he's like, really? Wait a second. Here's this play. Look at this. This is prime Russell Wilson type of play. A couple years ago, he's probably going to take a sack there. He's extending play. He's doing what he did. He extended plays, but instead of taking sacks, he threw the ball away, which was good. It was smart quarterbacking. He managed the offense well. He had a strong cadence. It looked good. And it looks like Russell Wilson he's about 80% of where he used to be. That was about 80% of Seattle Russell Wilson right there. Better than it looked in Denver for sure. And if that's how it looked in game 1 against a good Steelers defense, if that's how it looked in game 1, I can't even imagine what it's going to look like in game 3 or 4. And Washington will be a tough one, but they have a bad defense. They're beatable. And the Steelers love to beat up on bad quarterbacks. They're going to beat Washington in a couple weeks after their bye. They're going to beat the Browns a couple times. They're going to beat the Bengals probably at least once. I mean, they're going to win 4 or 5 more games here. So Tomlin, again, is going to have a winning record again. And everyone doubted him. And I've never doubted it. I've picked the Steelers to win 9 to 11 games every single season I've been podcasting. 5 years. All 5 of those years, I've been considered too high on Pittsburgh. Every year, it's the same thing. This is going to be the year that they fall apart. This is going to be the year that they finally have a losing record. And it's like, why this year? What changed? They still have a great defense. They have the same offensive playmakers, and they upgraded quarterback. Whether or not you loved Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, you had to admit that Russ and Fields were a better combo than Rudolph, Pickett, and Trubisky last season. Remember, I mean, they were winning games last season with Mitchell Trubisky. They were winning games they went to the playoffs with Mason Rudolph. If they could win 10 games last year with Pickett, Trubisky, and Rudolph, of course they can win 10 with Fields and Wilson. And everybody acted like I was crazy for saying they're going to be a winning team. How many people picked them to finish last in that division? There was never a scenario where that was going to happen. You trust the media, or do you trust the guy who's never had a losing season 17 years as an NFL head coach? I'm going to trust that guy. I'm going to trust Mike Tomlin. I think he knows what he's doing. And I said I trusted him on the quarterback, and it looks like he was right. Now, is it going to be perfect? I don't think so. Russ will have his bad games. Watch Russell Wilson on Monday night against the Giants. He's probably going to struggle because the Giants have a good defense on the road. And Russell Wilson tends to struggle against the Giants. I know this. I've watched him play in Seattle. He's been upset before by the Giants. Colt McCoy beat him a couple years ago with the Giants. So I don't know if they'll lose that game, but watch Wilson. He might struggle against the Giants. But I still think that this is the right move long term. This gives them a better chance at beating Baltimore. This gives them a better chance of winning the division, and it gives them a better chance ultimately getting to the Super Bowl. And that's what they need to get to. So I'm all in on this move. The Jets side of things, man, Rodgers he looks washed. And for Aaron Rodgers, this is going to have to be his last season. I think that's where the point that we're at right now with him. Because I don't see any way he can play again next year as far as his public perception. When you think about where Aaron Rodgers is at right now. Look at this, Wilson. That's a prime Russell Wilson type of play. That was vintage. And we saw a lot of that. But with Rodgers, if he retires after this year, everyone's going to forget about it. He can chalk it up to the Achilles. He can say, look, I was 41. I probably shouldn't have even played that year. I was coming off of an Achilles at age 40. And it was a new environment, and I was hurt, banged up. And hey, I gave it a shot, but clearly I needed to retire. He can chalk it up to the injury. No one's gonna remember this in a couple years. Remember Matt Ryan went to the Colts, got benched in his last season. Remember that? Do you? I don't. Not really. I vaguely like, did that happen? I guess it did. But no one's gonna remember Matt Ryan for that 1 year with the Colts when he went 4-7 and got benched, and then got unbenched and then retired, or got hurt, benched, unbenched, benched again, hurt, retired, all in one season. No one's gonna remember that. Whether or not he goes to the Hall of Fame, I don't think he will, but if he does, no one's gonna remember that, and if he doesn't, no one's gonna. That's not the reason That's not the reason Matt Ryan will or won't be a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? And in 5 years, no one's gonna remember that even happened, because he only spent 1 year there, and it didn't go well, but it was the last year of his career. He was hurt. He was banged up. So Rodgers, if he retires after this season, you can chalk it up to the Achilles, chalk it up to being 41, chalk it up to the new environment. Nobody's going to remember this. But if he plays longer and he keeps playing poorly and he keeps doing this thing where he blames his receivers and he blames his coaches and he creates drama, it'll start to hurt his legacy. Now, it's not going to get him out of the Hall of Fame, but it starts to hurt his legacy overall. So I think he has to retire after this year. I think he knows that, just for his image. Here's a missed field goal, a blocked field goal. Look at that. The Steelers look good. I think they could. I hate to say this. It's kind of true though. Like, their ceiling is the same ceiling as Baltimore and Houston and Buffalo. They could definitely lose the AFC Championship game to the Chiefs, right? Like, that's kind of where we're at. The Jets would need, honestly, a miracle. It's not too late for them. They could still turn it around. They have a lot of winnable games coming up, but man, I mean, they did just sign Hassan Riddick, so he's finally coming back. They need him, and they need him to be good. They need him to be a game changer, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, good game for the Steelers, ugly one for the Jets. Now, their counterpart in the North has been just as impressive. The Packers have been really good this season as well. I love these new all-white uniforms, by the way. They beat the Houston Texans on Sunday, 24-22. Great game. Jordan Love now, 15 touchdown passes. He's missed 2 games. He's averaging 3 touchdown passes a game. Still struggles with a little bit of turnovers, but he feels like Josh Allen did in his early days, where it's like, yeah, there's going to be some mistakes, but he's really talented. Clearly, he's electric. He's talented. And he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns. He's going to score a lot of points. The Packers also, it's not the big names, but everybody on the Packers receiving core can make the play when you need them to. Wicks, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, all these guys can make the big play. We've seen Reed have a couple big games. We've seen Watson have a big game. We've seen Doubs have a couple big games. It's everybody for Green Bay right now. And again, Josh Jacobs still has something left inside of him. Packers are a great team. They're a playoff team. They might challenge Detroit and Minnesota for that division. I mean, you got 5 5-win teams in the NFC North. Or 3. You have 3 5-win teams in the NFC North. And the Bears at 4-2 aren't too shabby either, although I do think they're the worst in that division. Meanwhile, the Texans, I don't think the loss is that bad. I will say, it is concerning to see CJ Stroud play so poorly with a relatively healthy team, other than no Nico Collins, but Tank Dell was healthy. Stephon Diggs was also healthy. Joe Mixon, healthy. And he really struggled. And I get that it was on the road, but I think you have to hold him to a little bit of a higher standard. I mean, I thought he was going to be an MVP candidate. I thought he was my pick to win the MVP. I still think if he finishes strong, he could be, but there are clearly some issues there, and without Nico Collins, he didn't look like the same player. So we'll see how we'll keep an eye on that. I don't know when Nico is scheduled to return, but it was tough. I mean, for him, only 84 passing yards or something like that. It was crazy. And again, like I talked about with Brock Purdy, that doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback, but it does mean that he's not at that level yet where it's like he's clearly a star. Because if he was, I think he would be able to overcome Nico Collins a little bit better. Because it's not like Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell and Joe Mixon and Dalton Schultz are bad players. He still has a lot of playmakers, even without Nico Collins, and it didn't feel the same. I know they scored 22 points. It didn't feel the same, though. It felt choppy. It felt like Stroud wasn't in control. It felt like they were really leaning on the run game and really trying to lean on the defense. So keep an eye on that. All right, how about that Lions-Vikings game, man? Was that not impressive? Jared Goff, Sam Darnold. The Vikings are legit. Let's be honest about this. The Vikings are legit. They have a good defense. I know they allowed 29 points. They have a good defense. The Lions are a great team. I love that fourth down. I love that they were going for it there. I love the aggressiveness of it, but probably not the right play call at that point in the game. Yeah, Darnold, I will say, Darnold is starting to struggle. He's starting to show signs of weakness. Not that he's having a bad season, but he struggled in the Jets game, and he struggled against the Lions. To be fair, again, good defenses, so I'm not super worried about him, but let's back off the Darnold MVP chatter. Goff might be the real MVP. 15 for 15 he started that game. So impressive. But the Vikings proved, I think, because I thought the Lions would win, but I thought they would win by more than 1 point. To be honest, like I thought that was a great performance from Minnesota. I think that proves that they are here to stay. I think it proves that they are probably among the top 5 teams in the league. You know, like I'm thinking Kansas City, Detroit, Minnesota, Baltimore, Houston, and probably Green Bay, top 6 in the league. We'll see where my power rankings fall this week. But I think they're clearly a top 6 team in the league, and that's something I did not see coming in this season. Vikings look really good. Like that's not a bad loss. That's a fine game to lose. Detroit, I've been saying all season, they are the biggest threat to Kansas City. They're gonna win the NFC, I think. I picked them to win the NFC in the preseason. I was close between them and the Eagles, but I picked them over the Eagles. I feel very happy about that choice right now. They look amazing. Both of these teams, though, are amazing. There's playmakers everywhere. I mean, look at the Vikings have Jefferson and Addison and Aaron Jones, and the Lions who have Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery and Amon-Ra. It's a ton of playmakers, and it's efficient quarterback play. It's not great quarterback play, but they're doing what they need to do. They're playing efficiently. They're playing smart football. They're making passes. They're letting their playmakers do the jobs for them. Goff is an elite distributor. And Darnold, I think, is taking a page out of Goff's book. Just be a distributor. Don't try to be the hero. Don't try to do too much. Just be a distributor. That's what they're doing. Both of these teams are. And they are proving that this can work. And if this does work, especially with Minnesota, but also in Detroit, you're going to see a lot more teams start to build themselves this way. Where it's like, yeah, we don't need to pay our quarterback $60 million and get a superstar under center if we can build the rest of the team the right way. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more teams try that build. We'll see if it works, but man, I mean, I think these two teams are great so far. Seattle got the win, and Geno Smith continues to really ball out. I've been super impressed by Geno this year. As a guy who, I'm not the biggest Geno fan. I don't hate the guy, but I've never been a huge Geno fan. But they looked good. 34-14. Defense was humming. Geno was humming. DK Metcalf was humming. How about that? Great throw to DK right there. Geno so far this year, just to 8 touchdowns to 6 picks, 89.4 passer rating, but he leads the league with 1,985 passing yards. This is the Ryan Grubb offense. He's going to throw the ball a lot, he's going to drop back a lot, and he's handled it. Seattle, that was the biggest win of their season, and I think that was the most encouraging win. I now have the Seahawks as a borderline playoff team. In the preseason, I thought they'd win 5 games. But at this point, I think they're 4-3 right now. I see a win against the Jets. I see splitting with the Rams and Cardinals. And then I think you win one more in there. Who else do they play? I don't exactly remember. Do they play? They've already played the Patriots. They'll lose to the Bills. They could probably beat either the Bears or Vikings, I would guess would be that last one. So I see 4 more wins on the schedule, maybe 5. If they win 9, and they're either going to win 8 or 9 games, I think. That's my prediction right now with Seattle. I don't think that's enough for the playoffs. It might, though, because the NFC West, they're leading the NFC West right now. I'm not sure if I really believe in San Francisco. I kind of believe in the Rams, and I kind of believe in the Cardinals. It's that division, man. Any of those 4 teams could win it. I wouldn't be surprised. And Geno's been the best quarterback so far in that division. He's been better than Purdy this year. He's been better than Stafford. He's been better than Kyler Murray. Yeah, dude, Geno's balling out. And the Seahawks are playing well. Strong football. Good defense. Mike McDonald, that was the biggest win of his coaching career so far. I know it's very early, but they finally have kind of a signature win. Obviously, they did beat Denver, who's 4-3, but I don't really count that as a signature win because Denver was bad early and Bo Nix, it was his first start and it was on the road. So, and of course, the Patriots and Dolphins, those are, I mean, obviously they're going to win those games. So we'll see. I think pretty sure they have the Bills next. That'll be another big test for Seattle. If they beat the Bills, I will have to believe in them as a playoff team, I think. But right now, I feel like they're a good team. They really proved a lot. Falcons, again, I said I think they will struggle with some inconsistency, and they're showing it. Great game against the Bucks, great game against the Panthers, and then you lose a stinker at home to Seattle, because of course. And the Falcons, it's some growing pains. Kirk didn't play as well. So I do think Atlanta will be okay. Ultimately, their season ultimately is going to come down to a couple weeks from now. They play the Buccaneers. They beat them the first time. If they beat them the second time, they will win the division. They'll go to the playoffs. If they lose, though, if the Bucks beat them in round 2, which I think they will, I think the Bucks will win in Tampa against the Falcons. And if the Bucks do, then Atlanta's going to miss the playoffs. Because there's not room for the Falcons in the wild card. There's not. Like, they're 4-3. There's not room for them in the wild card. When you consider, I mean, the Commanders and the Eagles and the Bears and the Cowboys at 3-3, who I still think are a decent team, and the Lions and the Vikings, the Packers. I don't think there's room for 2 NFC South teams in the playoffs. So if the Falcons lose to the Bucks when they play in a couple weeks, that's probably their season. Good for them. The Bucks are probably going to lose tonight to the Ravens. They'll stay tied atop the division. So that's kind of where they're at. Talking Eagles, by the way, I feel like we kind of forgot about the Eagles after they started 2-2. And some kind of ugly wins. The Saints win was not a great one. And of course the Browns win was ugly. Even the Packers win was ugly. But let's be honest about the Eagles. They beat the Packers, who are 5-2. They beat the Falcons, who are 4-3. And their losses have come against, who'd they lose to? They lost to, I don't remember. They lost to the Falcons, who are 4-3. They lost to the Falcons, who are 4-3. They beat the Saints. They lost to Tampa. So their two losses are against the Falcons and Bucks, who are both fine teams to lose to. They have a good win against Green Bay. So I actually think the Eagles are a decent football team. I think we kind of forgot about them. Because of that Saints win was ugly, the Browns was ugly, the Giants aren't a great team either, but they have a good win, which is the Packers game. They don't have a bad loss yet. They blew out the Giants 28-3. Saquon, man, what a revenge game for him. I know he kept saying, "Oh, it's not about revenge. I don't really want to get revenge. I love the Giants." And obviously, he says all the right things. He's a class act of a player, but it's got to feel good. The Giants chose not to pay that guy. They chose to let him walk. They thought they could do better without him. Saquon is winning that breakup, absolutely winning that breakup. And Philly's one of those teams where it's like, I'm not sure what to think about them. Early in the season, I really liked them. I thought they would win that division. I thought they could potentially be an NFC championship contender. But then I saw the Commanders, and I kind of lost faith in the Eagles because the Commanders got off to such a good start and the Eagles got off to such a mediocre start. So I kind of switched up, and I basically said, well, the Commanders are going to win the division. So all of a sudden the Eagles are in a spot where they're competing with the Bears and the Vikings and Tampa and Atlanta for a wild card, and all of a sudden it gets really messy in there, and I kind of was off the Eagles. I was saying last week I think they'll miss the playoffs at 3-2, and I still not sure at 4-2, but they look like they can hold their own. And let's finish up here by talking Rams Raiders for a sec. The Rams starting to come back. They're 2-4. Stafford looked okay. He still didn't look great, but they're 2-4. And I think this division is still very much alive for them. They're only a game and a half out of first place at 2-4. And they still get to play Seattle twice. They're going to get Cooper Kupp back. They're going to get Puka Nacua back. And Stafford, we've seen this before. He struggles without Cooper Kupp, without Nacua. He's going to play worse. Remember when he got Cooper Kupp back last year? They were a completely different team. They won 7 of their last 8. They made the playoffs. They almost won a playoff game. As soon all they needed was to get Cooper Kupp back, and he's going to be coming back next week, it sounds like. So it might have been an ugly win. And Aiden O'Connell, by the way, broken thumb, so he's going to miss some time. It was an ugly win, but the Rams got it. They're 2-4. It was a win that they needed. They play the Vikings on Thursday night. We'll see how it looks. I think that Vikings game is going to determine for me if I stick with the Rams as my team to win the West. So if they lose to Minnesota and they look bad, I think if they lose close to Minnesota, they can still dig themselves out of 2-5. But if they lose and they look bad, I'm probably going to be off the Rams. That's kind of where I'm at with them right now. But yeah, they could still totally make a run at 2-4.